I think the thing that you said that I actually sparked an interesting thing to talk about with you.
I am a genius, so
would be like kind of how you're talking about almost joking your way through life.
Yeah.
And I feel like that when I was, I mean, for most of my life, certainly all the way up to prior to the meditation sort of shift, is that and I didn't like, I don't think I openly like thought of myself like this, but looking in hindsight, it's like realizing like that version of me that was nihilistic and hedonistic, I think my top value was humor. Like all I cared about was just being funny. And that was like, I mean, I know I would think in my head, like I would reinforce, like talking to myself would be like, Cameron, you're the funniest person on the planet. And like I knew at the time saying it that I was like, this is ridiculous. This is not true. This is not measurable. This is inflated ego. Like I knew what I was saying. But for some reason I would continue to repeat it in my head. And I think that during those years, that might have been the funniest I was right up to the end, like prior to me getting into meditation. But at what cost, I think, is the question. And I think I was so deep into humor being this like top value, with just like, humor is all that matters, just being funny. What even is truth and love and any of that, whatever. And so I think that it's enjoyable to be really funny and you laugh a lot, and that's a really great thing. But I think when you're not laughing and you're not being funny, what's there is
are
really
you happy?
Unstable. And so I guess I know I show this I've shown this clip to a number of people. I've never played it on the podcast, but it's a Jordan Peterson clip that when I first got, very shortly after getting into meditation and first getting into his stuff, is this clip of him talking about the truth. Okay. And that clip fucked me up. It in a really, probably the most positive way possible. And I think that this clip alone, I mean, of course there's so many other things that aren't Jordan Peterson related that contributed to who I am now. But I think this clip alone, just highlighting the value of truth and conceptualizing it in this way really made me think, and I have really made an aim to get further and further. Like now I think about my three values in this way as truth, humor, and love. And I think it's like truth needs to be first and humor needs to be second to it. Humor definitely matters. And I don't think most people talk about humor in this context of like divine truth.
It's already familiar.
But I still like have gone my whole life really valuing it, and I still think it's very valuable. I think humor is actually a really important kind of shadow of truth. And but love, I think it's not even that it's third, it's actually more like zeroth. It's like both things need to be encased in love. It's like love kind of helps you, because if you just say it's just the truth, then that will have you just saying all sorts of truth that may be true, but maybe you're sharing truth to people in ways that is not loving. Like it's you're doing it. I'm going to just tell this person the truth and fuck them, you know.
It's more for the sayer than because I hate hearing that.
It's like you could, like I could, let's say there was a difficult truth I need to tell you. Like let's say there was something that has been bothering me about our relationship for so long, and it's not true, but that I feel like I'm communicative with. You're also just someone that has never bothered me.
That's good.
And there's obviously there's one truth, that it's this thing that needs to be communicated, but there's probably a large quite a bit of variability in how I communicate that truth to you, and the way I say it, and the way so if love was not encasing the thing, I might just say it to you in whatever harsh way I feel like it, because I'm only concerned with just getting it out. But if you encase it in love, it's like, no, Kenny is a really good friend of mine. I do not at all want to compromise our friendship, but I do need to share this, so I'm going to be very careful with how I say this to him, and I'm going to let it out in a way that is loving. So and then same with humor. It's like you can make really harsh jokes to people that are done from a place of actually secretly hating the person or whatever. But if you do it you can still make mean, biting jokes to people. But if it's done in love, truly they feel it, and they're fine with you. They're like, oh my God, that was great that he picked on me. Like I got it. I felt it. I know that's my brother. I know he cares about me. I feel it. So I think that encasing both things in love is really important.
Right.
And in just case, like everything you do in love, like the way you create, that's another thing. I didn't have that value before. And that's been a really hard thing for me to reconcile with the way I was doing things, because it was always this blatant disregard. It's like, it's just what's funny, and it's just about making things,
right?
And then just wrapping my head around love, because I've always had some sort of grasp on romantic love, but then wrapping your head around this more like lofty, universal, like bigger love is this like very fundamental energy and emotion. It's like love is actually kind of synonymous with just positive energy as a whole. It's super powerful, energetic force that moves through everything. So anyway, I guess it's been a very hard, long adjustment period for me to figure out how to navigate. Like, I feel like the way I would navigate myself, that's an ongoing process, but I feel like I got some sort of grip on navigating myself on a personal level in my real life really quickly into this shift that I had. But the lag of how to go about doing art in a way that aligns with those values, that rearrangement of values, that's been hard. Wow. And I think I'm just now getting to the place where like it makes sense and it's natural to me. But I really like the last 5 Camboy albums that I made, like kind of starting the pandemic and then Love Songs. Like, I feel like that's maybe like Doc and Otawa, the film, was a really good representation of the explosion of my world coming up. The movie represents my dark, fucked up world in my head. And then I think the end represents the destruction of it, like realizing it needs to be addressed and destroyed, and that's what happens in the end. And so I feel like after that movie, I was kind of starting at ground zero, rebuilding something new, and what my creativity ended up getting funneled into. Like I tried to make Black Hole, I tried to make another movie, but it fell apart on its own, and I honestly don't feel like that movie was gonna do what I needed it to do for me creatively. But the arc of the Camboy albums, just the theme of love, that like it's not really in the first Camrona. It's addressed in the Bad Boy album. It's the No Girls Allowed song and Sensitive Side. And I don't know how familiar you are with these.
I've never heard them all. These ones I was nervous a quiz was coming up because I was like, I'll be so bad at it. Just because I'm not like, that's rap.
So tell me which song these lyrics are from. No, just kidding. And so it's like, but it's kind of like it addresses like I'm scared of love a little bit like in there, but I'm a bad boy, so I don't even worry about that stuff. And then I don't feel well, I need attention is like the album I made in the wake of this fucking psychotic break I had, and I'm like piecing my self back together, and I'm writing in a more poetic and real way. I'm kind of tapping into the truth with that one, and I'm using it, and it's uncomfortable, and I'm incorporating humor after I get a hold on using the truth. And then there's a whole section of the album that's kind of about love, and then it goes back, and it's just, all right, rapping, here's fun. So I was just having fun for the last several tracks, and then they get kind of real in the last 3 ones. I Don't Feel I Need Attention is probably like my best album, I think, in my opinion. There's only, well, never mind. I won't get into that. Okay. And then Camrona 2, there was this really, I feel like, nice metaphor with love and the virus, or it was more like fear in the virus. And, you know, the opening track just kind of lets you know, okay, we're continuing, and this is sort of the feel of the album. Then it immediately goes into COVID Crush, I think. Is that? No, Lockdown. And it's kind of like I'm locking myself down from feeling love. Like I'm afraid of love, so we're going to lockdown. Love is kind of like, it's the virus. I'm not going to let myself get the virus of love. And then it's COVID Crush. I'm crushing on a girl who may potentially have COVID, but you know what? I feel something for her, so I'm going to go get that COVID. I'm going to go experience. And then right after this, take your vitamins, and immediately it's turned like, oh, that didn't work out. Fine, I'm going to take my fucking vitamins. I'm immune to this shit. Fuck that. And then, there's just this whole thing about like facing fear with that album. It was much more like artfully done and like brought the metaphor together. And then fucking Love Songs for Absolutely No One. It's like, I intentionally in real life recognize I have this fear of romantic love. I have not gotten over this since the one relationship I've been in, and I intentionally dove into a real romantic situation that from a, if you break everything down, is actually kind of funny on itself.
Well, yeah, it all
I hung out
back.
with this girl like 3 times, or twice, I think, when I made the album.
Yeah.
And I made a whole album for her.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's really fucking good. Like, that's the only album I feel like I actually might like more than I don't feel Well I Need Attention, I think, is a more colossal and deep and interesting album. It's got a wider range. I think it's more meaningful, but I think Love Songs for Absolutely No One is much more polished, and like every song, there's not a song on that album I don't like. I like all of it. Even 2 years later, I listened to it again recently. I'm like, I enjoy listening to this album
as a fan.
Yeah, as a fan of myself, I really like this album. So I feel like that arc there, and then it's like in line with the truth. Like, love is this theme, and of course continue to incorporate humor. But now, truth has become. It was a main driving force there in that last one, where it's like I was starting to slowly incorporate it. But that one is like, no, this is all in line with the truth. It's this uncomfortable truth. I love this person I've only hung out with twice. This is embarrassing. But it's true. And I'm sharing this in this way that's uncomfortable for probably both of us, honestly.
Right.
And
I'm sure for her.
For sure. I mean, she's had a whole arc of like,
coming around.
She liked the individual songs I was sending her as I was making it. And then at a certain point, she's like, okay, this is too much. And then I put it out and she was upset with me. And then in a few days, she changed her mind. She was like, no, it's cool that you made something. And then we got in a fight. And then she was like, you know what, fuck you. And then 2 months later, then she finally was like, hey, let's talk. This is actually real. I finally listened to it. Actually, I didn't just skim through it. And it's a really good album, and that was so meaningful for me.
It's all you needed.
That moment, because it was like I made it for her, and for me to be under this impression I made that she fucking hates it and she's mad at me for it, that sucks.
No, definitely.
But to have it in like 2 months later, her be like, hey, I apologize, and it's actually really good. I like it. And then I got to hang out with her shortly after. We like were in a hotel room singing the songs together. That was fucking unreal.
And it's like you never know until you like walk out on that ledge, you know what I mean? And like try. It's like the exact thing I was talking about earlier. Like if you had a day where you were just trying to not have problems, like none of that shit would happen. You know what I mean? You're like, I'm gonna risk being uncomfortable, being nervous, being scared, and then come out the other side of it. 2 months later, singing songs in the shower that didn't exist a little while ago. Like oh man, there's something else I want to say about that. I don't know.
But the whole point of all of that was the truth and humor thing.
Right.
Like what do you feel like your relationship with those two things are? Do you feel like you have some sort of what is your concept of truth?
That's a heavy one. I was gonna more backpedal to the humor part of it too, just because I feel like that's an easier like relationship to chart or whatever. Because it's like, again, I think everyone's kind of funny in their own way, and like you can find funny things, but like being quick and being witty, I've always like valued that as a skill. You know what I mean? Like in other people, I'm like, God, that guy's so sharp. You know what I mean? Like I can't believe how quick like his mind works like that. And honestly, like from like my dad, when I was a kid, he was like one of the funniest people I ever met, and gave me like just little things I kept in mind all the time. And I'll use this time to have them recorded so everyone can remember them. But one of them was just like not everything out of your mouth has to be a joke. You don't have to be that guy that's always saying something. And he put it to me so simply. He said, if you say 5 things, like in class, like this is more, class clowny kind of advice. He was like, if you say 5 things, maybe 3 of them are really funny, people are going to remember you're real funny. If you say 1,000 things and 3 of them are really funny, people are going to remember how fucking annoying you are. You know what I mean? So that's always something I kept in mind. But the one thing I would have like engraved for him or whatever was just like, you can't fake it. You can't pretend to be funny. You know what I mean? You could pretend to be happy or sad. You could pretend to be sick if you wanted to. You could pretend to be mad at somebody. You can't pretend to be funny. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not really funny. I'm not. You didn't laugh at that. It was, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, so that it was like always having it there, and just like as simple as, like, oh, they laughed at what I said. That makes me feel good. And that's just like a childish reaction that never really goes away. It's like, oh, I like that they thought what I said, like their face is smiling now because of a thing I said. That makes me feel good too, And in relationship with like truth, like in comedy, like maybe I'm not as far along as you yet, but I like still have no problem. Like this is for the sake of a joke. Like what I'm saying has no like truth to it whatsoever. But it's kind of a big question, like the what is truth thing too. And I think a lot of it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about like bettering yourself and self-care and all that stuff and improving for like no one's going to do it but you. Cause it's like, Sorry, my mind's faster than my mouth.
No, you're fine. I actually was thinking about showing you
truth thing.
that clip
Okay,
of Jordan's.
If you want,
this, I mean, it's like the only other like just single YouTube video with just like a speech that.
But if you don't want to waste airtime doing it, I can watch it after. You know, yeah.
I've actually kind of been wanting an excuse to play this clip
Okay.
on the podcast for a while.
When do we take calls?
One way of conceptualizing yourself is that you're one speck of dust among 7 billion. And when you conceptualize yourself that way, you might think, well, what difference does it make what I say or do? And that's actually quite convenient for you, because if it doesn't matter what you say or do, then you don't have any responsibility and you can do whatever you want. The price you pay for that is a bit of nihilism, but if you don't have to shoulder any responsibility, that's a small price to pay. That's the underground motivation for nihilism. But the other way of looking at it, and this is actually the accurate way of looking at it, is that you're in a network. You're a node in a network. And so you can do a little bit of arithmetic very rapidly and just figure out how powerful you are. You know 1,000 people. You're going to know more than that over the course of your life, but let's say 1,000 for the sake of argument for now. They know 1,000 people. That means that you're one person away from 1 million people and 2 persons away from 1 billion people. And you're the center of that network. And now the way networks work is that information propagates in a network manner. So don't underestimate the power of your speech. Now, you know, Western culture is phallogocentric. Let's say it. Okay, so we'll say, yeah, that's just fine. That's exactly what it is. It's predicated on the idea of the logos, that the logos is the sacred element of Western culture. And what does that mean? It means that your capacity for speech is divine. It's the thing that generates order from chaos and then sometimes turns pathological order into chaos when it has to. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, all right, I'm going to say what I think, stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am. I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. Now, the reason you think that's an element of faith. The idea is that nothing brings a better world into being than the stated truth. Now, you might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. So if you're going to stand up for something, stand up for your truth. It'll shape you because people will respond and object and tell you why you're a fool and a biased moron and why you're ignorant. And then if you listen to them, you'll be just that much less like that the next time you say something. And if you do that for 5 years, you'll be so damn tough and articulate and able to communicate and withstand pressure that you won't even recognize yourself. And then you'll be a force to contend with. And you don't get to wait until, because I get letters like Gad Saad gets all the time too, from faculty members in particular, and they say, well, you know, when I get tenure, it's like, then they think, well, when I'm an associate professor, and then they think, well, when I'm a full professor. It's like, if you're a professor already, you're like the most protected person in the history of the planet, you know, and you need, well, okay, but one of the things that indicates is that it's almost impossible to provide people with enough protection so that they feel safe to speak. Okay, so we'll address that directly. It is not safe to speak, and it never will be. But the thing you got to keep in mind is that it's even less safe not to speak, right? It's a balance of risks. It's like you want to pay the price for being who you are and stating your mode of being in the world, or do you want to pay the price for being a bloody serf, one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that, right? No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you, because of course you've never stood up for yourself. It's like, say what you think carefully, pay attention to your words. The price it's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. And in the most real sense, if you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. And nothing better could possibly happen to you there'll be ups and downs, and there'll be pushback, and there'll be controversy and all of that, but it doesn't matter. The truth is what makes the world, the truth is what redeems the world from hell, and that's the truth. And we saw plenty of hell over the last 100 years, and we haven't learned a bloody thing from it. It's like, wake up, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. That's a start. And you got to understand that's a risk. But I have one more brief thing to say about that. So, I said what I had to say back in September, and I'm sure that I could have done it better, and many people have told me how I could have done it better, although it didn't mean they would actually do it, but
Jordan.
And my job was at risk, serious risk, for about 2 months, and it destabilized my family, who've been very brave about this. So, thumbs up to them, man. They've just stood by me. But here's the optimistic news: is the university has left me alone completely. I shook hands with the dean 2 weeks ago. We're on friendly terms. They don't want this to go any farther than it has already. The students were tremendously welcoming when I came back to teach in January. I haven't had a single negative incident at the university. And I've received thousands of letters from people all over the world, all of which have been in support. I've received 2 negative letters. That's it. 2. So the people have an inchoate longing to have the sort of thing that we're talking about articulated. And so don't be thinking you're alone. It's just that people can't talk, they're afraid to talk, or they don't know what to say. And those are real problems. So if you're reasonably articulate, start talking and sharpen yourself up. I mean, the enemy is a cloud. They're a cloud of gnats. They're only courageous in groups. They're only courageous in mobs. If you stand your ground and don't apologize and articulate things properly, they'll disperse around you like they're not even there. So most of it's illusion. So don't be afraid, but be afraid of the right thing. And the right thing you should be afraid of is not saying what you say, because that's the same as not being. And here you are, suffering away. You might as well be at the same time. At least then there's something to you.
I think I like that a little too much is the problem, because it's right, man. You could hear me on this podcast even. I feel like, more than just me, but me too, have trained myself into talking to people where I have these little prefixes and suffixes of and I could be wrong. You know what I mean? Like that. And it's to what end? It's if I just say something it's fact, then you're gonna get attacked or jumped, so I have to have all these buffer phrases that keep me protected from any kind of persecution, and it's exhausting, dude. It's sick,
I've this. I mean, it's a little. It's not unrelated, but it's off to the side, kind of around on that same note. Is these filler words that are kind of like that. I'm trying to think of a good example so it doesn't sound like I'm just talking about the same. If I were to, I don't just asking a girl to do something, you ask it rather than a direct, do you want to go tomorrow to do this? Rather than being
hey, we should hang out sometime.
Hey, we should hang out sometime. Maybe that would be cool if, maybe what? No. Just ask the thing. Just be direct.
Yeah.
And, I think trimming the fat off your communication is...
And it's a
part
practice.
Of it.
It's hard too, and it's a practice like anything else. Because like I said, I try to be better, and because I want clarity. I don't want any miscommunication. You know what I mean? I don't want. Oh, I thought you said that. I was very clear with what I said we were doing. There's a text that can prove. I just probably the neurotic part. You know what I mean? I was just I just don't want to have to worry about this later. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I talked to a friend one time who we got into a disagreement about. Just a healthy one. We had 2 different points of view, and at the end of it, he said, oh, but I was just playing devil's advocate. I don't really feel that way. I was like, well, it's okay if you did, man. I learned a lot from what you had to say. That was kind of interesting too. I was like, well, do you really feel that way? And he goes, I don't really have an opinion. And I was like, wow, man, that might be the saddest thing I've ever heard in my entire life, that you don't have an opinion, And I tried to charge him a little bit and make him realize what he said, confront him with what he just said. And I was like, that's heartbreaking to hear that you don't have an opinion, man. Really, you don't have an opinion?
But I think to hone in, just because I wanted to play that before we continued where we were, just with the truth and humor thing, because this was no mention of humor.
Sure,
there.
right.
But in that context of if it's for the sake of a joke, of course I'll say a thing that isn't true, and I think that's totally acceptable, especially in the context of doing comedy, or even if it's just an off stage joke. There's a way where it's one, it can still be considered the truth because it is true that I think this is funny and I want to share this.
Yeah.
That's true. It's genuine. I think maybe a better way of saying it, truthful. And like, yeah, maybe the setup of it, you have to say something. It's not, oh, I went to the doctor's earlier today. He didn't go to the doctor's today, but it doesn't matter because it's for the setup. The lady at the front desk said your whale cum. Like, what, a whale cum now? So it's like, okay, that's clearly a joke. Do we even care that he went to the doctor's office? Right, exactly. But on that same note of, even for the sake of comedy, particularly in the context of doing stand-up, like being able to fabricate things about you for the sake of that art form and a joke, I will say that I have found myself, even though I'm still fine with doing that, I found myself gravitating more towards, like, if there's a way to take what's real and true for me and actually like make that my material, it seems to work better for me for a number of reasons. One, it seems to grip audience's attention more because they can tell that I'm telling the truth. So I have their attention more, and if I have their attention more, I'm more easily able to manipulate you know, the structure of a story or like the mood, because more people are like full attention. And the other thing is that I don't have to work so hard to remember the bit. Like, it's like, oh, I'm just speaking a thing, like how it happened. The only thing is I have to think about what details are not contributing and like how to just say the bare minimum, but enough that it's artfully done and told in the best way possible so that the joke lands. Like, that's all that really matters in terms of what to filter out. But yeah, I think it's just that, and it feels more fulfilling when like, you know, it's one thing to construct a joke that is totally not rooted in reality. It's a completely made up scenario just to say a little funny thing. But it's also great. It just feels even better to do that when it's like, no, this is a real thing that happened to me. This is a thing that bothered me that happened to me 3 days ago, and I constructed that truth and then and made a joke out of it, and I'm now sharing it, and I'm able to tell it in this way. Like, they can tell I have this vigor where I'm sharing something real. They're paying attention, and that they're on the edge of their seats, like sharing a human experience. And I don't even have to make an effort to like write that out or think about it too much, because it is real. It's just coming out naturally. So I have found that even in that context, like, that is still like a super useful allocation of like paying attention to that value more deeply and like going down that path.
Well, I like what he had to say about it. It's like, it's nobody. It's a what is it? A cloud of gnats. They're only
the people that you're worried about.
It's
that
like
when you share your truth that are going to come after you.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. But again, it's like everyone's just more concerned with having like that suit of armor of like, I didn't say anything wrong, and if I did, it was only because I was quoting someone. You know what I mean? It's like, it's okay to be wrong too, which is like what people aren't okay with. It's like, it's okay. I probably said wrong shit on here today. You know what I mean? But it's like, of course.
That fucking micro expression. There's the two things I really felt like were the most powerful lines of that video for me, that stuck with me, that hit me when I heard it, and the first time, and still to this day, like, just I feel like are so valuable, is the whole thing about you don't get to pick not to suffer, or that it's like, it's dangerous to speak, but it's even more dangerous not to speak.
Yes, true.
You have to. You don't get to choose not to pay a price. That's what it was. You have to pick your poison. It's like, are you gonna pick the poison of standing up for who you are in this world, or are you gonna pay the price of being a bloody serf? And like, that was me of like, holy fuck, like, no, I don't want 5 years later to be this person that's afraid to say what I think, even as wrong and ignorant and biased as I am. And then the last thing he says, what I think really drives that point, is like he says in the last sentence of that video, is like, not speaking your truth is the same as not being. And
that's
it really is.
I know what you mean.
You're just off to the sidelines, and you're not engaging with the one chance you have in your existence.
That's true.
To be.
Especially like in your own life. You don't want to be on the sideline of your own life either. You know what I mean? Like, but again, it's hard. Like, he makes it sound so I feel like he's what I needed though when I read it, because again, I don't like we were talking about, like, we loved Danny McBride when we were younger. We love this, like, back at like teenage years, it's a lot easier to be like, everything he says is perfect, you know. But when you get older, you're like, oh shit, he says wrong shit I don't like too, you know what I mean? And like we said at the beginning, you have to pick and choose what's worth like listening to. But it's just like his energy I like too, because it's like, talk about, I don't have a principal to yell at me. I don't have anyone, but I still feel like you're in trouble. I was like, I think I inserted Jordan in there to yell at me a little bit because I feel like I needed it a little bit. Like, why'd you leave the door open? I was like, I don't know, man. I just left it. You understand animals and bugs can get in here and it's a waste of electricity, right? It's like, yeah, I guess I knew that, but I just left it. It's like, well, close. It's like, that's, you know what I mean? Just simple shit. I almost have like an imaginary Jordan in my head too. Like, what? You've been sitting here saying you need to get some water for 15 minutes. Go get some fucking water, you know, and come back to your seat. Like, I also think he's like a polite. I mean, he's not polite. Like the whole thing about Canadians. I'm sorry. Like polite. It's like he has the different take on it than I've ever seen because he's yelling at you. He's like, I'm sorry, but you know, like it's the different. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also feel like a lot of the good that he does is probably for people like me that really didn't have a dad growing up.
Sure. Yeah.
And in part, like, almost largely grateful for the chain of events there in terms of like not having that void empty for so long and having him be the thing that fills it.
Sure.
Because it's like, if you could pick a person to put in that void, like that's a pretty damn good like balanced thing. Because he's not just like this. It's not just the hard, tough love father figure. You know, it's actually like a really complicated, nuanced like worldview, and that gives you both like the tough dad, but also like the kind of more intellectual and softer like explanation behind it, where it's not just like, because a lot of like what he's saying is like it is tough love, but what's so confusing about tough love is that you just experience the toughness, and that all that you get out of that is kind of, it's all unconscious and you don't understand it, so you might resist it a lot more if it's just like, well, my dad's mean to me, I don't, and you might be more inclined to rebel against like what is trying to be accomplished with the tough love and just completely go the opposite direction, where it's like, no, I'm going to do the tough love thing to you, but I'm also going to explain to you just textually long-winded reasons for why you need this and why it's good for you, and it would be in your best interest to implement this in your life.
I think you like pretty much like came to a similar conclusion I had too, because like I grew up with, for the most part, like a because I said so dad. You know, I'm the dad. That's because I said so, you know, and I've always thought like, man, if I had a kid, I'll do my best to explain to him why I'm making these choices. But if at that point they still don't like understand or go with it, well then, because I said so at that point, you know what I mean? And like a good example of that is like being a kid. It's like, you got to go to school. I'm sorry.
What the fuck?
I'm a terrible guest. I got other apologies too. I forgot. I just remembered I want to apologize before the end. But I don't know. Should I back up a little bit? I had like a because I said so dad, you know, and then it's like, I always said if I had a kid, it's like, I would love to not just be a because I said so dad, but I can also understand that a kid won't understand everything I will and the thoughts that went into deciding it. So it's like, okay, I'll do my best to explain to you, like you said, a long list of reason and rationale. But if at that point you still don't get it, then it's because I said so. And that's where we're left with, you know? Because like when I was a kid, I would like, oh, I can't miss school or my parents will get mad. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until like high school where I was like, oh, there was a reason for that. That's like a stand-in for real reasons. It's like, why do I have to do this? Because I said, you know, because you like, you know, like, because an adult told me I had to. But then it's not until you're smart enough to piece it together on your own. Like, oh, that's why I wasn't allowed to stay up till 4 a.m. and eat pizza every day. You know what I mean? Like, you're not smart enough to come to that conclusion on your own yet. So you need like a real tangible, like, this is the reason. And I can show you like a strict parent, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he just has a way of explaining stuff. And there was plenty I glossed over where like he'll just give like a big historical lesson. And I'm like, can we just get to like the meat of this? I don't want to skip any words or anything. And I think I'd benefit from rereads down the road too. Yeah. But at first I was like, there were plenty like I hear from him that I'm like, this is really going to help me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I want to say something else about Jordan. You have to listen to Jordan from start to finish though too, because he always sets you up with like a this is like the joke we've done about him forever of him being like, I don't know, for example, Cameron, you can't just sit there doing your podcast all day. Oh sure, you can sit around doing your podcast all day, but he like always negates what he said. But you won't like the outcome, I'll tell you. You know, like, so anytime I do a Jordan Peterson impression, it's like, you can't just eat raw meat. Oh sure, you can just eat raw meat, but like, so just say one thing, immediately negate it. That's my Jordan impression.